Good morning and welcome to Committee of the Whole. Today is Tuesday, October 3rd. Madam Clerk, please note that Mayor Virginia Haxton is absent with notice, and as acting mayor, I will be chairing the meeting. So I'd like to call this meeting to order and ask if there are any declarations of interest. Seeing none, I will proceed to the land acknowledgement. The town of East Gwillimbury recognizes and acknowledges the lands originally used and occupied by the First Peoples of the Williams Treaties, First Nations, and other Indigenous peoples. And on behalf of Council, I thank them for sharing this land. We also acknowledge the Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nation as EG's closest First Nation community and recognize the unique relationship the Chippewas have with the lands and waters of this territory. They are the water protectors and the environmental stewards of these lands, and we join them in these responsibilities. Now we'll move on to community announcements. I have just a couple for myself. Congratulations to Emergency Services on a successful fire prevention open house. It was very well attended and a great opportunity to educate and share information on the fire prevention and safety. And I think Councillor Foster, you and I both noted that we might have outgrown the facility where we're at. We're going to have to figure that there was an incredible amount of people there. And this past weekend, I attended the Farm to Fork event. It was very well done and organized. There was a lot of people on the tour, and congratulations and thank you to the Chamber of Commerce for organizing this event, and thank you to all the farm locations that took part in it. It was great. I went there personally. And just another reminder that this Thursday will be the final East Gwillimbury Farmers Market, so be sure to get out and get what you need for Thanksgiving celebrations. Now, I pass it over to Council to see if there's any members who'd like to share an update. Councillor Leahy.
Thank you very much through you, Acting Mayor. I also attended the Farm to Fork event, and I'll be cooking up the big box of mushrooms I get annually, I think, for the next 2 weeks to come. So it was a great event, and thank you to the Chamber of Commerce. The final farmers market of the season is taking place this Thursday, October the 5th from 2 p.m. and come out and support the local vendors for our last time this season. As well, on Friday, October the 20th in the evening and Saturday, October 21st, the East Gwillimbury Public Library is having their annual giant book sale at the Holland Landing Community Centre. For history buffs, on Saturday, October 23rd at 7 p.m., there will be a tour of the Sharon Burying Ground on Leslie Street in Sharon taking place, and it's called Twilight Tales, A Journey Through History by Lamplight. The event is free, however, donations are appreciated, and you can register on Eventbrite. And I'd like to ask that you save the date for the Hollyberries Artisan Christmas Show that will take place on Saturday, November 4th, also at the Holland Landing Community Centre, with over 60 exhibitors for Christmas shopping. Proceeds raised annually go to the Holland Landing Lions Club. So lots happening this October.
Thank you, Councillor Leahy. Anyone else with any announcements? Okay, seeing none, we will proceed to deputations. We have A. Paton on behalf of Acorn Development Corporation making a deputation regarding item G2, Development Services Report. And I would just remind people that you have, our deputants, that you have 5 minutes, and I'll try and be generous where I can, but keep it brief. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of Council. My name is Ashley Paton. I'm a registered professional planner with Bousfields, and we are the planning consultants for Acorn Development Corporation, the owner of 18508 Leslie Street. I first wanted to thank staff for their work on this file, particularly Antonio Greco, who is no longer with the town, as well as Victoria Moore, who is here. We are supportive of staff's recommendation to approve the zoning bylaw amendment application for this property that is before you today, and we support the implementation of the holding provision related to servicing allocation. Next slide, please. So this property is located on the west side of Leslie Street, just south of the current Sharon Public School. There is currently a single detached dwelling located on the property, and Acorn Development Corporation also owns the property abutting this property to the south, labeled as 18490. Next slide, please. This property is part of a larger subdivision that was approved by council and rezoned in 2015 to facilitate a mix of residential and community uses. Within this approved subdivision, 18490 Leslie Street was identified as a medium-density residential block shown in gray in the bottom right-hand corner of this slide. In 2015, Acorn did not own 18508 Leslie Street, which is shown in the red in the bottom right-hand of the screen, and therefore was not rezoned along with the rest of the subdivision. When Acorn purchased this property in 2021, a zoning bylaw amendment was submitted to rezone just 18508 Leslie Street to match the zoning that was approved by council for 18490. Next slide, please. The property is along the Leslie Street local corridor, which is designed to support an urban mixed-use character that is pedestrian-orientated and supports transit use. Next slide, please. 18508 Leslie Street was not rezoned in 2015, as I mentioned, and is currently zoned RU Rural. 18490 Leslie Street, again outlined in dark gray, is currently zoned mixed use 5, MU5, with the site-specific exception and a holding provision which permits a range of residential and non-residential uses in a variety of built forms, including multiple dwellings, mixed-use buildings, and a variety of townhouse dwellings. So the zoning bylaw amendment before you today seeks to rezone only the property at 18508, highlighted in red, from RU to match the site-specific MU5 that applies to 18490 Leslie Street, as well as there's a number of other properties along the Leslie Street with that zoning. Next slide, please. So a site plan application was submitted for both 18508 and 18490 Leslie Street that is still being processed and reviewed by town, regional, and LSRCA staff, and we are continuing to work with staff on that site plan application to address the technical comments that we've received. So as I mentioned, the zoning bylaw amendment application before you only relates to the zoning for the portion outlined in red at the top left, or sorry, the top right of that screen. And the rest of the plan located outside of that red box is already zoned the MU5 approved by council in 2015. Next slide, please. This slide illustrates a conceptual rendering of the type and scale of development that the requested zoning bylaw amendment would permit for the property, and that is already permitted to the lands to the south. And so this view is a view from Leslie Street looking southwest. So details of this future development, including the building design, are not being decided on today, but are being reviewed and addressed as part of the site plan approval, which will be subject to future approvals by this council. And next slide, please. So that brings me to my last slide, where I wanted again state our support for staff's recommendation to approve the zoning bylaw amendment application, subject to the implementation of the holding provision related to servicing allocation. And in my opinion, the requested application before you today is consistent with the provincial policy statement, conforms to the growth plan, conforms to the York Region official plan, as well as the Town of East Gwillimbury official plan, is appropriate and represents good planning. Thank you for your time and consideration, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions for our deputant? Councillor Roy-DiClemente, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. Through you to our deputant, thank you for your presentation. I'm just wondering why since your application is just for residential, why I guess the zoning and the official plan show that it should be mixed use, so that there should be something other than residential also on the site. Why is the application for just residential when that official plan designation suggests that it should have a bit more variety?
Through the chair, the official plan designation as well as the zoning encourages a mix of uses, but it's not a requirement. So although the policy is permissive in that sense, it is not a requirement of any of the development on the site to require non-residential uses.
I see. Okay. And then we're also going to need to have some kind of conversation about what happens with the existing home on the property to the south of this, the one that's before us today.
Yes, through the chair, that is being still worked on through the site plan with staff, and we are continuing those discussions with
as
staff.
well as architectural control features.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions? Councillor Carruthers?
Thank you. I just want to follow up on Councillor Roy-DiClemente's comment. I realize it's not a requirement, but you understand that it's the desire of the town. This is something that we have been working towards. So is there any way that the plans can be adjusted to help reflect this? We want to make sure that we're building communities for the future where not everyone's going to have a car. We need to be building communities where people can walk to a corner store or services. So is there any way to be looking at this in a more forward-thinking way and putting in that multi-use?
Yes, through the chair, we can definitely bring that back to our client. It's our understanding that there is no intention right now to bring that back, but we can bring that back to the Acorn for
It's
sure.
something that's important to this council. This council's spoken about a lot, so I think it's important that when developing here that developers keep in mind what the council's priorities are, and this is one of our priorities. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, can I have a mover to receive this deputation? Moved by Councillor Leahy. All in favor? Okay, carried. Next, moving to item F, presentations, none at this time, and so we will move into our chair reports, and we have first up, Development Services with Councillor Roy-DiClemente in the chair. Over to you, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. I apologize for not actually being in the Teams meeting. My computer has decided that it wants to kick up a fuss. So I am here present in person, but I'm not here virtually. Our first item on our agenda, we have 4 items, I think. First item is item G1, Development Services Report regarding a request to remove a property from the town's Registry of Cultural Heritage Properties. This was deferred from our September 19th meeting, so it's identical to what we saw before us. And I'm just wondering, Ms. Bégin, if you have anything further to add. I know we've dealt with this a few times.
Through you, Madam Chair, that's right. There's been no change to the report before members of committee. Just as members of committee are aware, there is a matter before the Ontario Land Tribunal. However, this request is a separate process. I know that there has been some questions about what the next steps may be, and our chief building official is here if there are any questions with regard to the process or how demolition is inspected and how the property standards are maintained and that kind of thing. So happy to speak to those if there are any questions.
Okay, members of committee, any questions? Councillor Carruthers, go ahead, please.
I have the same question I had before. How do we ensure that this doesn't turn into another gas station that's boarded up and sitting vacant for over a decade?
Ms. Bégin?
Through you, Madam Chair, the only real ability we have to influence that is when development proceeds. The reason that properties would choose to be boarded up or fenced off are matters relating to safety or security of the premises. So recognizing that it's not ideal, but it's really only when a development moves forward that they would typically proceed with demolition of existing structures if that's appropriate, and then proceed. There is a bit of a time when developers have only 4 years to recoup development charge credits when they demolish a property, so they need to have need to be relatively certain of the ability to proceed before they would undertake demolition of a property.
Thank you. So what I'm hearing is that this, in all likelihood, will turn into another boarded-up building like the gas station, knowing that, or I should say, guessing that we're not going to be having allocation for that development in the next number of years. If it's vacant right now, to secure it, they're going to end up boarding it up, and we're going to have now 3 boarded-up buildings in downtown. I understand we have property standards, bylaws, but obviously it's not enough dealing with the gas station. Is this something that we need to revisit, our property standards, to make sure that we don't end up with a downtown that's all boarded up?
Ms. Bégin, am I mistaken in recalling that the proponent has applied for a demolition permit?
Through you, Madam Chair, They had initially applied back in, I believe, February of, but it was, the application was deemed incomplete. And a significant factor, the heritage removal is applicable law for buildings, so they wouldn't have been able to consider it until it's removed from the list.
So they have intention of demolishing, and so when a property is demolished, the basement, if there is one, has to be filled in, and we would be left with a vacant lot that our property standards bylaw would apply. So they would have to mow the lawn and maintain the property as it is. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes. There are a number of inspections that happen through the demolition process, focused on sort of the disconnection of services and utilities, that type of thing. And then there's an inspection post-demolition to ensure that the property is safe and secure.
Thank you.
If I may,
Yeah.
I just want to get the timing on that straight, because it sounded like what I was hearing initially is that they wouldn't be demolishing it until they knew that they would be building because of how the DC credits work. So if they're not getting allocation, they're not looking at demolishing it. Is that correct?
Through you, Madam Chair, I can't speculate on what their plans are. They had expressed an intention to demolish, I believe, when they had the understanding or the intention of moving forward with their proposal. We can certainly, as we move forward in our conversations, can, share council's concerns around property standards and how the property is maintained. But beyond that, it's the timelines are really up to the property owner.
So they could choose to demolish without having that DC credit available to them. They could do it without having that.
Certainly, yeah, through you, Madam Chair, yes.
Or they could choose to board it up, and we have 3 boarded up buildings in downtown Holland Landing.
Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I need to support Councillor Carruthers' concern about this, understanding the position that we are in as the town. Is there any way that we can enter some conversation with the developer to kind of find out what their thought process is, and push forward our thoughts on what we don't want to see happen? And I guess while I have the mic, I think we need to take an extra step here to make sure that the public realizes that this does not mean we support the development as presented, because I know Councillor Carruthers' phone and my phone is going to light up as soon as that house, as soon as anything happens on that property. So I can support removing it from the list. The Heritage Advisory Committee also supports that. But again, if we can get some sort of an idea from the developer, if there's a deal to be made, I guess is the way to put it, I think we need to enter that conversation.
Through you, Madam Chair, absolutely. We can certainly commit to relaying those concerns and the desires of council at appropriate time, recognizing that we're a little bit restricted with respect to communication at the moment because of ongoing matters. But it's my understanding that the intention is to work collaboratively with the municipality.
Thank you. Okay, what I neglected to do when we introduced the item was ask for a mover. Moved by Councillor Crone. Any further discussion? So it's as presented, so that we would be receiving the report and that we would be approving the request to remove the property from the registry. I see Councillor Johns has his hand up. Please go ahead, Councillor.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. Nothing new to add in my position from the previous conversations, but I will just say that a comment that I heard from Ms. Bégin about the conversations being restricted due to the process that they're undertaking reinforced my position that I want to, while we note that the items are separate items, I will just comment that that Ms. Bégin's comment about the fact that the conversations are restricted reinforces my point that I'll be maintaining my position in my vote.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Carruthers?
I'd like to introduce a further motion to this. Did you want to handle this one first and then take mine?
Let's handle this one first, and then we'll do another resolution. Okay, so I have a motion as presented, moved by Councillor Crone. All those in favor? Opposed? And that motion carries. Councillor Carruthers, you wanted to introduce something else.
As a follow-up to the conversation, I'd like to recommend that council direct staff to work with the landowner to ensure that the property is maintained to the level in keeping with a main corner of a historical downtown. I also would like to further that staff bring back a report on property standards for abandoned buildings within the town of East Gwillimbury.
Members of committee, you've heard the motion as moved by Councillor Carruthers. Any discussion? Staff, you've heard the intent of the motion. Madam Clerk, you have that? Excellent. All those in favor? And that motion carries. Thank you. All right, the next item on our agenda is Development Services Report regarding zoning bylaw amendment application for 18508 Leslie Street. We have a resolution that we receive, that we approve the bylaw amendment application, and that we implement a holding provision. May I have a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Johns. All right, Madame Bégin, did you want to present your report today, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Further to the deputation and the discussion that followed, staff have raised a similar concern with respect to the proposed use, and recognizing that while the official plan does not require it, the official plan does represent the vision for how the community grows, and so we will continue to follow up with that. But this report before you is really to bring the zoning into conformity with the rest of the property. I'm happy to answer any questions that members of committee may have.
And it doesn't represent an approval of the site plan or any of the other pieces, it's just the zoning and land use.
That's correct, Madam Chair, and so all of the technical discussions are still ongoing.
Thank you. Members of committee, any questions? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. It's moved by Councillor Johns. All those in favor? Opposed? And that motion is carried. Next item is investment attraction activity update from Development Services as a memorandum. May I have a mover, please? We're just receiving this. Moved by Councillor Leahy. Thank you very much. Ms. Bégin, would you like to present this? And we see that we've got someone coming to the, is it the lectern, Mr. Active? Okay, it's the lectern. It's not the podium. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, should it be the wish of committee, we have our Manager of Economic Development here, Brendan Kenny, who can speak to some of the content of this memorandum. The focus was just really to provide an update. Council had approved a capital budget request to enter into some lead generation and investment attraction activities, and this is a report back on those, or an update on those efforts. So I can, if you'd like to hear more, I can certainly pass it over to Mr. Kenny.
Well, he's ready to present to us, so I think we should say yes.
Sure.
Please go ahead, Mr. Kenny.
Thank you very much. This is a bit of an appetizer to the workshop that's going to come to you on the 11th, Economic Development 101, but did want to get a little bit of face time and sort of talk a little bit about investment attraction activities that have been undertaken over the last, I guess, year and a half would be accurate. The things that we want to emphasize in the report is that investment attraction and the way that economic development operates in this space is we are in a competitive environment. There is no guarantee of leads or investment or really of any interest in our community unless we create it in some cases. Obviously, we react to some of the leads that come in. We have active developments across, Green Lane, Woodbine is kind of where we focus a lot of our activity in those mixed-use areas. But really, when you're looking at the high-value, high-paying, really well-paying jobs that allow people to live and work in our community, investment attraction plays a really big part in that. And without sort of a lot of the activities that economic development does, you can't really hit the ball unless you throw it. So for us, it's really just giving as many opportunities to East Gwillimbury as possible to be able to hit that ball. There were a couple of activities that happened. We engaged research on investment, ROI, which I'll reference. They went to a parish show on our behalf. We did not have staff representation at that show. That was them on our behalf.
Darn.
Created a few leads, and we're still working with leads there. And the other thing that I want to emphasize, though, is even though we create a lead, it can take months, years in some cases, for that lead to actually come to fruition and get a shovel in the ground, if it does at all. You want to take as many swings as you can, and that involves that sort of proactive investment attraction activities. So Paris was one of them, and then the last one, the most recent one, was in June, where Brittany attended Autotech in Detroit with the region, and a very collaborative atmosphere there with our partners across, a bit of co-opetition, so to speak, amongst neighbors. And there's a few future actions that we want to identify. We're putting together essentially a portfolio for investment attraction. How do we put our best foot forward for this? So for us, a community profile, demographic, statistical, growth-based information, target sector profiles, how do we get hyper deep on that? And an investment inventory. What is the menu of options that we have for people that are coming to our community? So it's not just, hey, East Gwillimbury is a great place to invest, but specifically we have X, Y, and Z for you. So I'm happy to take any questions, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Kenny. Any questions? Go ahead, Councillor Crone.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for your report. Having in my corporate experience, I did a bit of business development, so I can appreciate the bigger the price tag, the longer the sales cycle and the tail on. And I know it may be difficult to quantify for you, given that so many conversations are happening. In my past, I've used lead generation. I've used some that are really good, and unfortunately, a lot of them are really bad. So are you able, at this point, to quantify if you're satisfied with the results we're getting to date? So are we spending the taxpayers' money wisely? Do you feel we're getting value for our investment?
Yeah, and I may lean on Ms. Bégin a little bit for that. She has a little bit more context.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. This was our first sort of foray, sort of dipping our toe in the investment attraction pool. I believe that the process that with this particular company is to develop a target prospect list initially, and we had the opportunity to vet that and approve it. So we were comfortable that the companies they were approaching on our behalf were a potential good fit for East Gwillimbury. So I think it worked well from that perspective. It gave us international reach without having to have staff travel. I think that's a useful model. The consultants attended a very extensive familiarization tour within the community, so they really were able to speak to what our specific attributes and value proposition was. So I think the intent was to sort of build the capacity within staff team to be able to take over more and more of this function, but this sort of set us up on the path to be able to follow up and engage and identify more events that may be of interest. I think it is a good, it is efficient to engage an expert company like this to do a meeting setting program, so that if you do attend a trade show, you're guaranteed of having quality meetings, as opposed to just trying to walk the show and hope that you have conversations. So I do think going forward, it has proved to be quite productive. So.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Yep, sure. I should have prefaced my question with just by stating that I support this approach. I think it's a bold move. I think it's progressive for a municipality to be doing this. So I'm really delighted that we're doing it. I think it's a big swing for us. So thanks for doing that. Back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kenny. And some people may know this, but I keep track of the word of the day, and co-opetition, I think, is rising quickly to the top. And thank you and welcome to East Gwillimbury. Thank you for choosing here to work. So I have a motion as moved by Councillor Leahy. All those in favor? And that motion is carried. Thank you very much. Next item on our agenda is a memorandum from Development Services regarding a proposed official plan amendment application for 5 addresses on Woodbine Avenue, 2 addresses on Farr Avenue, and 1 address on Mount Albert Road. Ms. Bégin, would you care to present the memorandum, please? Oh, before we do that, may I have a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Foster. Go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. This is an introduction to the process that is being undertaken to expand what we know as the 404 Employment Land Secondary Plan area. I note that our Planner 2, Janani Nagulan, is here and can speak to the sort of the why now, and the process that we will be following if Council has any questions. Also wanted to note that Ms. Nagulan was recently successful in passing her Registered Professional Planner exam. So we have another RPP on the team. So happy to answer any questions or invite Ms. Nagulan to speak in more detail.
Congratulations, Ms. Nagulan. Members of committee, any questions on this one? Seeing none, call the vote. Moved by Councillor Foster. All those in favor? And that motion carries. Thank you very much. And that is, according to my paperwork, the end of our prepared agenda today. Members of committee, do you have anything to raise under Development Services? Ms. Bégin, do you have anything else to bring up?
Through you, Madam Chair, just wanted to note that we will be welcoming another member to the planning team on October 30th. We have a senior planner joining, so we're very excited to be rebuilding our team on the planning side. So,
Great news, thank you. Anything further? Seeing none, I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Acting Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. We are now on item H, Community Infrastructure and Environmental Services, with Councillor Leahy in the chair. Over to you, Councillor.
Thank you very much, through you, Acting Mayor Crone. The first item on the agenda is the Community Infrastructure and Environmental Services memo regarding the Sharon Queensville water quality and flushing update. Could I please have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Crone. The report is moved by Councillor Crone, and General Manager Molinari, do you have any comments you'd like to make?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And through you, this update memo is being provided for information as a result of some changes that we're observing in our distribution system and the need for flushing to ensure favorable water quality for our residents. So delivering safe potable water to our residents is our #1 concern, and flushing is a necessary maintenance activity that is used in all water systems to replace older water in the pipe network with new, fresher water with a good, stable chlorine residual. So the Sharon Queensville system is operated for over a decade with minimal flushing requirements, and over the past year plus, we've observed significantly more water with low chlorine residual, which has resulted in the need for flushing. So we're working with the region to understand the cause and to develop a comprehensive model of the network so we can better understand how to minimize and address this issue going forward. We wish to note, though, this is going to take time. It's a systematic process that involves a lot of hard work and trial and error in the field. In the short term, we're also working with the region on how to address the high flushing costs and are proposing that the town not be charged the sanitary discharge fees for flushed water, as the water is going to the storm system and not the sanitary system. We've also requested that the region consider a reduced flushing rate, or at minimum share the costs for necessary flushing while we work on a solution. So this is a significant issue, and we intend to report back to Council through the budget process as this unfolds. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from members of committee? Councillor Foster?
Thank you. Mr. Molinari, you and I have had this conversation in the past, quite a while ago now, but I'm not 100% sure, but I think I've been made aware of a possibility of a situation where we have a local businessman who is supplying water to be put on the roads outside of construction sites. And I believe this gentleman has to buy water from outside of East Gwillimbury because he gets a better deal than we can sell him. I can't help but think that if we're flushing water, have we had any advancements on how we could possibly sell that water at a really reduced rate to a local business, to anybody who wants to use that type of water for that use. It just seems that if we're dumping it down the ditch or down the drain or wherever it has to be, and all we're looking for is water to put on a road to control dust. I know that your flushing activity may not be set in stone, and it may be a situation where, you know, a phone call would have to be made to a business that says, hey, next week we're gonna have so many hundreds of thousands of gallons of water, whatever it ends up to be. I just wonder if there's any advancement, or are we still working on a situation where we could take advantage of that for both us and for a local businessman, rather than, you know, if he can buy water cheaper, why wouldn't we sell it to him?
Through you, Madam Chair, I guess it's a question of logistics. So when does the business need the water, and when are we needing to flush? And if those two can be aligned on a reasonable basis, then there may be opportunities for that. And that's something that we can look into. We also have our bulk meter station, which has been set up for that purpose at the end of bales. So anytime anybody needs water on a bulk basis, they can go to that particular facility, and that water is being sold at a pretty favorable rate. I believe that we were actually on one of the lowest in the general area, if I'm not mistaken. So, but those are, you know, those sorts of things. If there are good solutions to assist, that won't solve the problem. But if there are solutions like that that can help to assist, we're more than happy to look at those.
Thank you. As long as it's still top of mind, and maybe the next time I'm speaking to him, I'll tell him to reach out.
Yeah.
It's time to look at it again.
Will do.
Are there any other questions from members of committee? Yes, Councillor Chrome?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just like to echo what Councillor Foster is saying about the water filling stations. I was speaking to a gentleman who worked in the Durham region in their water area, and he was saying that water filling stations can generate for a town up to $250,000 a year in revenue. And I think we need to start looking at more revenue opportunities where we can. You know, $250,000, that's almost a point on our 1% on our taxes. Wouldn't that be great to have that to offset? So I would really encourage us exploring that. You know, I had my pool filled up this year, and the water truck, the guy had to go to Stouffville to get the tanker filled up. You know, he drove by, you know, he could have done it in town. So anyway, opportunities abound. I know quality and aesthetics of our water have, you know, I think every one of us up here on this table have heard questions about it. Do you think, Mr. Molinari, there's any value in having someone from the York Region water area to come here, so, you know, that you're not always taking the brunt of our of what we're experiencing? Anyway, I throw that out for consideration, if it's of value to have someone come here from the region so that we could have a chat with. Anyway, thank you, Madam Chair.
Through you, Madam Chair, certainly we can always reach out to the region and request that they come and provide a bit of an update on their capital program. There's a number of items that they are working on. Some are in the near term. Some are actually fairly far out that we would appreciate actually getting advanced if possible. So, you know, we can certainly reach out to the region and see if we can arrange for them to come in and provide a brief presentation for council.
Councillor Carruthers?
Thank you. And tell them to wear their body armor when they come in, hey? When we're, I just want to follow up on what Councillor Foster was saying. I think that there's a lot of financial sense in what he's saying, that maybe we can recoup something and help a local business. But the bigger thing to me is the environmental issues around dumping water. When I was on the Environment Committee, we did a lot of work on a water strategy, telling people how to save water and look for drips in your home and all this kind of stuff. And then we're just dumping all this water. So even if it's difficult and it's not convenient and it's going to take more staff time to try and hook up with local business instead of just dumping this water. I think from the environment's standpoint, it's something that we have to be doing, that we have a bit of an obligation to make sure that we're not just dumping that water. If there's another use that can be put to, that we're looking for that. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair, certainly we're always looking for better uses for water. I guess at the end of the day, even if we are flushing water, it's not wasted water. That water doesn't disappear. It's finding its way back into the aquifer, and it will be used again and over again. So from that perspective, it is not waste. It is still a viable item. But we certainly, if we can use it in a better way than just disposing it into our storm system, obviously that is preferred if it can have a useful life before it gets returned to the ground.
So when we talk about wasting water, we're talking about water that has to be refiltered to be reused. Water never goes away. It's always part of the water cycle. But when we just dump it, it has to go back into the system. So it's the same as when we talk about people wasting water, leaving their tap running when they're brushing their teeth. That's the same sort of thing. That water doesn't disappear, but you're wasting it because it now has to go back through the system, be treated again. So I think that we need to be looking at that a little bit more carefully from an environmental standpoint.
Yeah. Your point's well taken, and obviously nobody wants to flush water. That it takes a lot of staff time. It's costly. There's no real benefit except that it's a necessary thing that has to be done in order to ensure that we have good potable water for delivery to our residents. So everybody's on the same page with regards to minimizing that, and we'll do what we can to do that and to find uses for that flushed water where we can.
Thank you, General Manager Molnar. Councillor Roy-DiClemente, did you have a question?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just I guess some comments. I know that we do have the filling station over at Bales that is generating some revenue, and so perhaps during the budget cycle, it would be helpful if that was highlighted as part of the presentations on the water budget, is what sort of revenue we're getting from it, and what strategies we are going to be employing to perhaps market that service a little bit better to water trucks and other potential customers. I think that would be helpful. As far as the overall issue with respect to flushing, I think there's two issues here, and I'm wanting to keep them separate. One is the flushing issue, and I'm trying really hard to keep it classy. Because the number of years that I have sat here and the number of times we've had this very conversation, which is we're flushing a lot of water and the region is charging us, and we're discussing how to deal with the water bill with the region. We've had this conversation in Harvest Hills, we've had this conversation in Bales, and here we are again having a conversation about, and in this case, it's the region is billing us for water that we can't sell to our customers, so it's a product, we're paying for a product that we can't use, and they're now trying to charge us to dispose of it and treat it again, because it has to be treated as if it was wastewater. That's profoundly disturbing, and I know, Mr. Molinari, that you're doing your utmost, you and your team are doing your utmost to address that. So I do think it's a good idea to have a representative from York Region come and share some of their strategies and hear perhaps from us as tactfully as possible, but this is a profound issue for us. The other piece of it is what I refer to as the aesthetic issues, and that is the iron and the manganese that are coming into residential homes, that people are turning on their taps and they're flushing their toilet and they're filling their bathtub with water that they feel is aesthetically displeasing. And that comes down to, and I realize some of it has to do with the fact that there's sediment in the pipes and it's sloshing around when we flush, but it's also because we're pulling these sediments out of the wells and not filtering it before it goes into the system. And so the report notes that wells 3 and 4 are looking to have an upgrade somewhere between 2025 and 2029. I would like to see us try and find a way to advance that project sooner rather than later, put it into the 2024, 2025 period. And then even more disturbing for me was that wells 1 and 2 could be waiting as long as 2043. That's not going to solve the problems that we're hearing from our residents, that Councillor Johns and I are hearing on a regular basis from constituents who don't even know we're flushing the volume of water that we are. They're simply turning their tap on and being unhappy with the product. So if there's something that we can do, and maybe it's the $750,000 worth of water that we're paying for, maybe they can take that money and put it into a capital project to address that filtration. And so that would be my suggestion. So it's not so much a question, Councillor Leahy, as it is just comments based on my experience sitting here and having this conversation over and over again. Thank you.
CAO Valchich, would you like to add to that?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a point of clarification, and perhaps Mr. Molinari can elaborate if I don't have this accurate. But the water that's being flushed, to my understanding, is that's actually not going into treatment. That water is being flushed into the storm system. So so in fact, it's not going into a process to be treated. It's just going back into the ground. The issue that Mr. Molinari was mentioning earlier is the town is being billed as if that's going into the treatment system and as if it's being treated, but in fact, it's not being treated. And so I think that's just for clarity, because I've heard water going in and being treated, but in fact, this water, unless Mr. Molinari, if I'm inaccurate, in fact is not, flushed water is not being treated.
CA Valchuk, you are correct.
Thank you very much. Councillor Johns, yes, please proceed with your question.
Great, thanks, Madam Chair. I just wanted to echo the comments of Councillor Roy-DiClemente. I think the opportunity to explore the water filtration, if it's in our forward-looking capital budgets, I think we should look at the opportunity to explore the upcoming capital budget and see what that looks like from an opportunity perspective. And I will just say, well, this is extremely challenging for us as a council and you as staff and as residents across the municipality, and specifically in Sharon and Queensville. I think that I was actually, while there was challenging comments within that report or challenging items within the report, I was actually buoyed by the fact that I feel that we are bridging the relationship and having the region hear our concerns in a much louder way. And I think that might have been, I can't speak to my time prior, but my gut tells me that could have been a bit absent in previous history. So I'm proud of the work that we're doing as a staff to encourage that open line of communication and recognize that this is such a challenge for us in EG and as well as specifically in Sharon and Queensville. So I just want to say thank you, Mr. Molinari, and continue to bridge that line of communication with the region so that they do recognize what we're going through. So thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions from members of committee? Yes, Councillor Carruthers?
So I'm just trying to get this straight after what Mr. Valchik said. That water is treated, and instead of going into homes, it's going back into the ground. Before it can go into homes, it will need to be treated again. So we are dumping treated water. So to say that it's not going to be treated again, it is going to get treated again. It's going into the ground, and before it can be used, it's going to have to be treated. So is there something I'm not understanding here?
CAO Valchich?
Madam Chair, sorry if there's confusion on that. I'll just restate that. What I'm suggesting is the region is charging us for treatment in their sewage treatment plant in Pickering. However, we're not sending the water to Pickering to be treated. And so at a minimum, it's illogical from staff standpoint that we would pay for a treatment process that we're not receiving. I'm not suggesting it wouldn't get treated again at the point that it's extracted from the ground and then pulled back into a well for drinking. But that's what Mr. Molinari was indicating in terms of the payment process. From our standpoint, it's illogical to pay for a service that in fact is not taking place.
I agree with that. That makes sense. But from an environmental standpoint, we still need to do everything we can because it is still wasting water. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from members of committee? Yes, Councillor Crone.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just wondering with some of the good discussion we're having here today, and Councillor Roy-DiClemente supported my notion for maybe bringing in some members from York Region staff, that I amend my motion to include that we invite at such time a member from York Region Water Department staff. Madam Clerk, you've probably cleaned that up better than I've said it, so.
Through you,
Maybe
Madam
you can
Chair,
read
the motion's been revised to request that staff invite York Regional staff to be invited to provide a presentation to council regarding water quality and flushing.
Very good. Yes, so seeing no further questions, I'll call for a vote on that amended motion. All those in favor of the motion as presented?
Sorry, can I speak to the motion before the amended motion prior to? Through you, Madam Chair, thank you. Just for clarity, Mr. Molinari, is it appropriate with the amended motion at this point in your discussion with the region to have them come and speak now, or would it be appropriate for them to come and speak when there is a more wholesome deliberation that has been completed to present us in a more robust way with their response? I just don't want to, I recognize that there has been a lot of work in the communication, and I just don't want to have a curveball thrown into it if the discussion isn't complete. I'm fully on board with having the amendment in the way the amendment to have staff come in. I just want to make sure that it respects the time of the discussion in which you are having with them.
Through you, Madam Chair. I think there's leeway in the recommendation or in the motion to provide flexibility in terms of when we bring the region back for that presentation. So we will endeavor to discuss with the region and come back at an opportune time when they have enough fulsome information to provide to council, some answers, and go from there. So it may not be in the next month or two, but it will be at a time when it's going to make good sense.
Thank you very much, General Manager Molinari. And Councillor Roy-DiClemente, do you have any final words?
I did. I just wanted to thank Councillor Johns for raising that, for being mindful that the region is not necessarily our whipping boy, but really they're our partner in this, and giving the tools to Mr. Molinari to be able to manage that and coordinate that accordingly is very appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, I will read aloud because we have one council member who's joining us virtually. I will read aloud just to make it clear for everyone what the amendment to the motion is. That council requests that York Regional staff be invited to provide a presentation to council regarding water quality and flushing. And it is open-ended. There's no date specified. So I think we are good to go now to see no further questions, to call the vote. All those in favor of the motion as presented with the amendment? Very good. The motion is carried, and that is the last, no, there's one more item on the agenda today. We have the next item, which is the Holland Landing Revitalization Multi-Use Path Alignment Update. Could I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Foster. And the report is moved by Councillor Foster. General Manager Molinari, do you have any comments?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So further to our September 6th memo, we've reviewed the crossing locations on Yonge Street at both School Street and at North Street. There is some vertical geometry on Yonge Street at School Street. Staff did conduct a sightline analysis and found that both intersections have adequate stopping sight distance for a crossing. And in fact, the School Street location was found to have more stopping sight distance than North Street. So the School Street crossing location is preferred due to the greater sight lines, as well as the preferred location by the Lake to Lake Trail Committee, as well as regional forestry, as it avoids the removal of approximately 6 trees. So staff are proposing to proceed with the multi-use path on the east side of Yonge Street, with the crossing at School Street, subject to the region traffic area advising that they do not have any safety issues with that location. And happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, General Manager Molinari. Are there any questions or comments from members of committee? Councillor Carruthers?
I'm wondering if you can share with us the stopping distances, because I think there is some talk in the community that North Street has greater stopping distances, and I know that you've done the work on this, so I'm wondering if you can share with us those numbers.
Certainly, through you, Madam Chair. So looking at School Street, it's about 190 meters of stopping site distance looking towards the north. At North Street, it's about 120 meters looking towards the south. And based on the design speed of Yonge Street, so 50 kilometers is the actual posted speed. You add another 10 kilometers per hour. The actual stopping site distance, according to the MTO geometric design standard, is 85 meters. So we've well exceeded the stopping site distance at both crossings locations. So both would work, but our preference is for the School Street, just for the reasons noted.
I'm wondering if the memo can be updated to include those stopping distances, because I do feel we're going to get pushback from the community, because when you're driving down Yonge Street, it seems that School Street is right on the cusp of the hill, and North Street would make more sense. So if we have that data, if we could include that in the report. And Madam Chair, when we receive this report, if we can receive it as amended, I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Any other questions, concerns? Councillor Foster?
Thank you. I had a conversation with some staff members about possible signage. Is there something that we can do there that suggests to people that if they don't feel comfortable crossing at the crossover at School Street, just to remind them that they can continue north on the east side of the street and they can cross at the lighted intersection at Bradford Street if they so desire? I just think we need to make sure that people have that knowledge that they don't have to cross there. They can continue north on the east side.
Through you, Madam Chair, part of the Lake to Lake Trail is going to include wayfinding, and we'll be sure to kind of incorporate that into that overall process and put it to the group and see what they come up with. But it makes sense that there'd be some kind of signage to let people know what's up ahead and what to expect, et cetera. So we'll see what we can do with regards to that. Thanks for the suggestion.
Any other questions? Councillor Roy-DiClemente?
Thank you. I believe that there was a request to amend the report.
Yes.
And I'm just wondering, since this is Mr. Molinari and Mr. Brake's report, if they had any objection to amending the report as requested.
Thank you very much. General Manager Molinari, do you have any opposition to the amendment that's been proposed?
Through you, Madam Chair. No, that's our preliminary work. We're happy to update the report and include that item.
Thank you very much. May I ask the clerk to put on the screen so that we know the exact wording of the amendment before we vote on it?
Through Madam Chair, the amendment is noted in blue on the screen before you.
Okay, so we see no further questions. We are about to vote on this resolution that entitled Holland Landing Revitalization Multi-Use Path Alignment Update, that it be received as amended to include stopping distance data. All those in favor of the motion as presented? The motion is carried. Thank you very much. And General Manager Molinari, are there any other, is there any other information or updates you'd like to provide the committee?
Through you, Madam Chair, nothing further at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. And are there any other questions from members of committee? Seeing none, I will pass the chair back to you. Councillor Cron.
Thank you very much, Councillor. We are on item I now, the finance report with Councillor Johns in the chair, and I would just mention that as this is dealing with the Sharon Temple, we have two members of the Temple with us today in chamber. Over to you, Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. So this one item, it's a joint presentation between Finance and our Community Parks, Recreation, and Culture, and it is a memo. And as Mr. Acting Mayor noted, it's on the history of support provided to the temple and theirs back as well. And so need a mover for this. If somebody would like to move this item. Councillor Crone, thank you. And then not sure who's going to present, but I see them both sitting at the table together. Mr. Marshall and Mr. Karmazin, whoever would like to take it from here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just briefly, at our July CWC meeting, staff was asked to bring back some information regarding the financial support that's been provided to the Sharon Temple. This memo summarizes the direct and indirect support that the town has provided to the temple, and also support that the temple has provided to the town. So General Manager Karmazin and I are here to answer any questions.
So the report was thorough in its nature. So I will open it up to committee if there is any questions or comments on that. And I've got a couple of comments of my own, but we'll go to the committee first. Okay, so seeing none and nobody looking to speak to it, I just it was very thorough, and it was interesting to see the balance of the relationship of how we're supporting with the Temperance Hall, the way that we're both making these mutual investments. One of the comments, it's interesting, we recognize that the Sharon Temple is almost a part of the town, and I think that we use it in our publications, but I didn't see any note of that. Like, through the communications, do we have to provide payment for use of photos of the Sharon Temple in our publications? Is there restrictions on that, or is the Sharon Temple public? Not sure who that's directed to. And maybe communications. Communication can acknowledge to say that we
Mr.
don't pay
Chair,
it.
I believe we have an individual from communication, Laura Hanna, Director of Communication.
Thank you. Sorry, I just turned my camera on so you can see my hand now. Through you, Mr. Chair, no,
Sorry.
we do not pay. It's considered public property, so for us, when we use those photos, we don't pay for them.
Thank you, Ms. Hanna. So it's public property. Thank you. Okay, thank you. My second item that I was looking at, I know there has been a lot of conversation. I also serve as, on top of chairing finance, I also serve as the Sharon Temple liaison. And there has been some conversations regarding Howard House, and as well as the connection in with Welland Group. And I've been having conversations, but they haven't been formal conversations. And I'm wondering, Mr. CAO, if it would be appropriate if we could receive an update on and it doesn't need to be an update now. It can be an update at a future time, which would probably be more appropriate, to hear an update on the progress with Welland Group, and to hear where we are with that group, Mr. CAO.
Mr. Chairman, yeah, staff can absolutely come back with perhaps a memo that would highlight sort of what the history is of those discussions, and sort of where we are and where we see those going for council's information and for deliberation as appropriate.
Great, thank you. I don't know if do you feel that you need a resolution or direction as part of this report being received, or are we good to go in this manner?
Mr. Chairman, it's always helpful if we have a resolution, just because it formalizes the request and then we can respond to that. But we will do that either way. But if a member of committee wishes to sort of propose a resolution that we report back on the status of that initiative, that's helpful as well.
Great. Councillor Roy-DiClemente, you want to help craft that as
Yes,
while
I'll
I'm sitting in my
happy
chair,
to
and
assist.
help if a member of committee could. Thank you.
Yeah, no, happy to assist. I think it's separate from this memorandum. I think, if you'd like to deal with the first item, and then we can have a discussion about how best to request an update. Thanks.
Great. So we did have a mover for this, and so I'll happy to read the resolution. So be it resolved that the Joint Finance and Community Parks, Recreation and Culture Memorandum dated October 3rd, 2023, entitled History of Support Provided to the Sharon Temple Historical Society be received. All those in favor? Wonderful. Motion carries. And so I will, Councillor Roy-DiClemente, did you have something that you would like to speak to?
Oh my gosh, yes, of course, Mr. Chair. I think at this point, the Howard House project, the last update that council had was a deputation that told us that things were imminent, and that the only issue was a question of servicing the house when it came over to the property. That question was resolved because the sewer line runs right past the parking lot as of this summer. So at this point, one would have expected that we would have an agreement about when the house would be arriving on site. And I understand that there have been some discussions that came out of the blue for the Temple Board. And, the town's role, as I understand it, was that, the best way of describing it was that of matchmaker, of putting the Welland Group, who had a need to move the house, in touch with the temple, who had a need for a visitor center. And so our role was that of a matchmaker and a supporting role, but certainly not that of a third party. So at this point, there hasn't been anything official. There's only been conversations in back rooms, and not necessarily in back rooms, but there's only been conversations offline and not here in the chamber. So I think it's appropriate for us to have an update based on what took place here in the chamber. So starting from there, what's happening with the project. So, Mr. Chair, I'll put a motion forward that staff be requested to coordinate an update with the Sharon Temple Museum Society and the Welland Group for an update on the Howard House project.
Could I make a friendly amendment to that?
Absolutely.
And to say, when you had it defined specifically to the Howard House project, and you also obviously included the Welland Group, I'd like to better understand the Welland Group project as well, and what's going on with their development at Green Lane and Second Concession. So thank you for allowing that friendly amendment.
Yes, of course.
Madam Clerk, if you have hopefully crafted that as Councillor Crone, you will have done a better job than the two of us.
Through you, Mr.
If
Chair,
you
just
put it on
bear
the
with me
screen.
for a moment. I'm just refining it. I did have a hard time with the amendment that you presented, so just bear with me for 1 second.
Sure. Please let me know if you need any clarification.
And Welland's. And Welland's development plans for the land.
Through you, Mr. Chair, with the assistance from Councillor Roy-DiClemente, I was able to hopefully capture what the intent was. But the motion's on the screen before you in blue.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Councillor Crone.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just wondering if we want to, I understand that time is of the essence for the temple with some other funding, and time is of the essence. So could we try to expedite this for some time in the next in the next week or so? I think we want to help the temple out with some of their funding issues as well around this that might be dependent on the answer. So
Yeah, thank you, Mr.
Could we maybe,
Mr. Cron-
maybe
Councillor
put
Cron.
a notion around expediting this as quickly as possible? Thank you.
Councillor Roy-DiClemente has her hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we're going to resolve that staff be requested to coordinate an update for our next CWC meeting.
It's wonderful.
I think, I think the update as far as the development side of things is one thing, but as I understand it, there, and as Councillor Crone also understands it, there's a time sensitivity because there's other funding partners at play here, and we don't want to lose track of that. And then, Madam Clerk, I think, given that's my motion, I'd also be happy to add that we ratify this resolution at council later today so that it has the strength in order to actually happen.
Great.
Thank you. And I think, Mr.
Thank you.
Chair,
Great work coming together.
I think, Mr. Chair, I think Mr. Valchich would like to speak as well, if that's okay.
Thank you, Councillor Roy-DiClemente. Mr. Chair, or Mr. CEO.
Mr. Chair, thank you very much. We will certainly endeavor to pull something together for the October 17th meeting. However, at this point, without sort of having a discussion with the parties that we're trying to coordinate this with, I don't know about availability, pulling that together, getting information. So we will certainly respect whatever resolution committee wishes to pass and ultimately later today approved by council. I just am not certain that from the staff perspective that we could necessarily do October 17th appropriately, but we understand that time is of the essence and we want to certainly be moving this along as quickly as possible. So just please keep that in mind in terms of managing expectations with respect to timing to reply back. We can certainly endeavor to try and be back in front of you October 17th.
Great, thank you. Councillor Roy-DiClemente.
Perhaps I can amend the motion that staff be requested to make best efforts, to undertake best efforts. I would hope that we would be able to have something, even if it's just a verbal update. You know, this has been swirling around since, I believe, August or early September. I know I certainly had a conversation with a representative from Welland in early September. So, and I know that the temple made me aware of some of the issues a month or so ago. So I would hope that some dust has settled and there's some information to share. Thank you.
Thank you. So no further comments. I will read the motion. So be it resolved that staff be requested to undertake best efforts to coordinate an update for the October 17th, 2023 committee of the, I'll just say CWC meeting with this STMS and Welland Group. Development for an update to the Howard House project and Welland Group's development plans for the land, and that council ratify the resolution at the October 3rd, tonight, 2023 council meeting. So we have that moved. I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Great. Motion carries. Great work, everyone. Those are all the other, that is the item under finance. I will just turn it back to Mr. Marshall if he does have anything else that he would like to add.
Through you, Mr. Chair, nothing at this time.
Great. Anybody else from committee that would like to speak to anything on finance? Seeing none. Mr. Acting Mayor, back to you.
Thank you, Councillor. And we are now down to item J, Corporate Services, with Councillor Carruthers in the chair. Councillor?
Thank you, Acting Mayor. We have one item before us today, and it's a very timely communications update with the cancellation of the local newspaper. We're excited to hear what communications has planned. So I'll turn this over to you, Mr. Valchik.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, from my perspective, a little bit sad, you know, discussing potential reduction in sort of local community-based media presence and coverage. But as you mentioned, our communications team led by Director Hanna is busy looking at what we can do to make sure that there are no gaps in our communications to our residents, businesses, and stakeholders. So perhaps with your permission, I'll just ask Ms. Hannah to provide you with a brief overview, and certainly she's prepared to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mark. Through you, Madam Chair. I think the memo is pretty self-explanatory, but a couple of pieces that I wanted to highlight for you are that we have already started meetings with local advertising groups, and so a couple different digital opportunities, as well as I think that many people are familiar with the Bulletin magazine, which is a print publication that is mailed to every home in East Gwillimbury each month. So we are going to be ramping up communications in print with the Bulletin. We've always had some advertisements, but we're going to actually go through, and every month we're going to have a very similar town page that you previously saw in the paper. It's going to be the center, and that'll just basically be a town talk page similar to the town page setup, so it's more of a monthly feature rather than weekly. And so we'll be able to continue that for our print purposes. We know a lot of residents do want to hold the paper in their hands, so we'll have that piece, as well as some digital opportunities through potentially Newmarket Today, as well as Metroland Media Group. They are continuing to look at what the digital side is going to look like, and there's going to be different opportunities to post public notices and things like that. So I think that the next few months are really going to be trial and error for us. Let's try different things, see what works, see what the analytics are showing, and where our residents are getting the best information. And then I think in the new year, we do have a capital project that will be put into the budget. And what we're hoping to do is do the townwide survey to get a little bit more information about how residents want to receive information, where they're going to get the information right now. Previously, a survey like this was done over 10 years ago, so before I was with the town. So this is really going to be ramping that up and using some external resources to help us do that beyond what we'd be able to do in-house. So I'm happy to answer any questions or take any feedback that you might have.
Thank you, Ms. Hannah. It's a great report. Can I get someone on committee to move receipt? Councillor Foster. Are there any questions from members of committee? Seeing none, all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Do you have anything to add, Mr. Velchuk?
Nothing further, Madam Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Velchuk from committee? Seeing none, I'll turn it back to you, Acting Mayor Crone.
Thank you, Councillor. So seeing that we have nothing on the agenda for items K through N, I will move to item O for other business. Oh, Councillor Leahy, you have a point of order?
Yes, thank you very much. Through you, Acting Mayor Crone. I do have a question with regard to item M. My question is wondering when the council will be receiving the report that has been ongoing for the past couple of months of the review of EMSS.
Who from staff would like to answer that question?
I'll take that.
Okay, over to you, Ms. Gandy.
Through you, Acting Mayor. We had anticipated that we were going to bring the report to council the middle of October. The consultants have actually undertaken quite a lengthy process, and so there were more interviews than were originally anticipated, with individuals coming forward and requesting individual follow-up discussions. And so the report is slightly delayed. We've seen a very, very rough preliminary draft, so we are anticipating that it is going to come to the November 7th council meeting.
Thank you very much. Through you, Acting Mayor Chair.
Okay. Are there any items under other business that committee would like to bring up? Seeing none, I will call for someone to move for adjournment. Councillor Roy-DiClemente, all in favor? Motion is carried. Be it resolved that the meeting of the Committee of the Whole Council adjourn at 11:18 a.m. We're about to break into special council. Well, let's take a 10-minute recess. Let's reconvene back here. Oh, I feel generous. Let's give you 12 minutes. We'll come back at 11:30 a.m. All right, everyone?